Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Winslow. I have a question for you. So, if you've ever been curious on what your mind goes to, sometimes it goes to the stronger thoughts, whether that be good or bad. Well, we will get into what it can be, the good thoughts or the bad thoughts. Thank you for joining. This is Winslow with the Creative Whole Podcast. Hope everybody is doing well at this time. I know I am. Hope everybody's having a blessed day, night, whenever you're choosing to watch this. I'm hoping it's blessed. All right. So this episode of the Creative Flow Podcast, I will be discussing how powerful words can be, especially when they're the ones you tell yourself. So a big thing when I'm speaking about like negative self-talk, a lot of times it comes from you and it comes from the story that you tell yourself. So I was watching this thing earlier on YouTube. I believe it was from a pastor from the Life Church. One of the things that he brought up is something that a psychologist said, which is the law of cognition. So pretty much what that talks about is what you think impacts what you believe, which impacts how you feel, which impacts what you do. So typically what they're saying is that your life moves towards the stronger thoughts that you have. So whether it be negative, whether it be positive, whatever that strong thought is typically where your mind goes. So a lot of times with self-talk, if your, I guess, stronger thought is in the negative aspect, like I can't do this, I can't do that, rather than something positive like I can do this and I can do that. That's the typical path that you're going to probably be going. So the other thing would be like, I forgot who I heard this from. This is also on YouTube, but I was talking about, it was on TED Talks actually. I was kind of talking about the subconscious and the subconscious mind. Does it know the difference between positive energy and negative energy? So no matter which way you go about it, whatever you're going to put, I guess, at the forefront of your mind, whether it be negative or positive, it's going to affect you in some way. Hopefully more negative. I mean, hopefully more positive than negative. But either or, wherever it goes, it's going to be the thought process that you're going to be taking on. So right now we're going to kind of go into a little bit of towards the end of the last podcast of what Carlos and Adriano were talking about the leadership 101, the one by John C. Maxwell. There's 4 phases. I think right now we kind of go over maybe a couple of phases with the negative self-talk. So one thing is negative self-talk can be detrimental to one's growth and confidence as a leader. So whether it be as a leader, whether it just be as a peer, as a mentor, whatever the case may be, but the negative self-talk can be detrimental to your growth. And it can affect your confidence. So it's important to recognize and challenge these negative thoughts, replacing them with positive and encouraging ones. So the only issue, I guess, that comes with that is it's always easier to be negative. It feels as though being negative is a passive thing, unlike being positive. When positive, you have to like almost think about it and you have to reflect on it, and then you have to ponder and invest on something that's positive, such as what I was talking about earlier, like I can do this, or that will be done. Being negative is more of a passive thing. It's just, I can't do it. And you might not even know why you can't do it, but it's just the thought that you have. And one of the things that they talk about, maybe not so much in the book, but just things that I've researched, is pretty much the thought, a negative thought that goes into your mind is pretty much just a thought, and then it becomes a belief. And after you've had this belief, it's a little bit harder to control, because all that you want to do is you want to be pretty much take the path of least resistance. And if you spent years being negative, it's a little bit easier to just go down that path of being negative. So hopefully we could kind of switch that around a little bit. And a lot of it's goes down to changing the story that's in your head. And the only person that can change that story is you. So a lot of times they talk about the turn the I can'ts into I cans and I won't into I will. So that's probably a tip that won't be an instant. You won't have instant gratification from it or anything like that. It'll just be one of those things where it's like a working process. And a lot of times what we talk about is to love the process, is to do the process, is to take the steps that needs to be taken in order to reach the end goal. So if that end goal is to be a little bit more positive in your life and have positive self-talk, then it is going to be a process. But just know that the process can be, in a sense, conquered to where you won't be thinking negative thoughts as much as you normally do. So here are some examples of negative self-talk that one might encounter in each stage of the leadership development. The reason why we're going over leadership development is because that was kind of one of the things that we went over with Leadership 101 with John C. Maxwell. And kind of don't mind my voice. Getting over some bad allergies where last week my voice kind of went out. So hopefully it does not go out on this podcast. But once again, thank you everybody for checking us out. We appreciate all the love, all the comments, pretty much everything that anybody has showed. And once again, hopefully we can build this community and we can flourish, make it grow. We get like-minded people for if, I don't know, you might have some self-talk going on or something like that. You might be able to go into a community that we have and just explain like, I'm having some bad thoughts in my head. Everything is just like negative self-talk and I need some words of encouragement or I need some way to pick it up and possibly some positive reinforcements too, whatever the case may be. So one of the things was about acknowledging what you don't know. So one of the quotes would be, I'll never be able to learn all the skills necessary to be a good leader. I'm not cut out for leadership. I don't have what it takes. So for myself, a lot of it comes down to breaking down the words, and not investing too much brain power into what it is. So for instance, like I'll never be able to learn all the skills necessary to be a good leader. So first of all, being a leader, we've talked about it before. It's all about being like an influencer or something like that. And I'll never be able to learn all the skills necessary. That's almost like an absolute thinking process, which when you think in absolutes, it can cause a little bit of problem because with an absolute thinking, to my understanding, is it's either this or it's that. It can't be anything in between. It's this is this, that is that. So by saying like I'll never be able to learn all the skills necessary, first of all, probably a lot of people won't be able to do it. Secondly, all you could do is whatever skill that you need to learn to be a good leader. First, almost what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about. Actually, there's like a few people, even Sean Cannell from Think Media. So a lot of times, like what they do is they'll reverse engineer like a lot of things. So what is a good leader? So a good leader will do this, 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 and this. A lot of times there's probably not hundreds of skills that you need in order to be a good leader. So what I would suggest is just grab the top 3 that you feel are the best things in order for yourself to be a good leader, and kind of reverse engineer that in order to see what you need to do. I'm not cut out for leadership. I don't have what it takes. So that comes down to the whole thing of I just switch leadership with influence, and you can influence anybody, friends, family, people on social media, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, I guess it depends on how much you invest into the whole idea of I can't do this, which a lot of times, like all you have to really do is think about what you can and can't do. Now, if it was like, I can't be a neuroscientist, okay, I get it, because there's going to be a bunch of things that are going to go behind that. But if it's something like leadership slash influence, I still believe that a lot of people can be a leader. Um, and it's not even one of those things where you need like the title leadership or leader in any case like that. So one thing that it talks about is I'm afraid to ask questions because it will reveal my lack of knowledge. So with that being said, like I can see I've I guess heard that a couple times, and even I've thought about that a couple times. Like if I ask questions, and well, my big thing would be not so much it will reveal my lack of knowledge, but I would turn the reveal my lack of knowledge into me being stupid. I don't like being stupid. Maybe pride kicks in a little bit. So especially in class when I used to go to school, I didn't want to ask questions because I didn't want to seem dumb. Even though like asking questions, all that's going to do is going to make you better at whatever you're doing, whatever class you're taking, um, whatever skill you're trying to get. It's only going to make you feel better. A lot of times, probably a third of the people in that class, um, or in conference or whatever you want to take, they're probably asking the same question. And then eventually, who knows, maybe like 3 to 5 months down the line, you might run into them online or something like that. And then be like, oh, yeah, I remember you. You're the one that asked that question during that convention, conference, class, whatever the case may be. And I'm glad that you asked it because I really needed to know the answer. And they didn't know it. And so you were, in a sense, brave enough to ask the question. And just as something simple as that, like you led them down the right path, even though it was a teacher that was actually teaching the lecture, but you're the one that actually stopped and built up the courage in order to ask a question. So asking questions is definitely a good thing. So another part that I would talk about in the book was knowing what you don't know. And some of the thoughts might be, I'm so far behind others who have more experience and knowledge. I'll never be able to catch up to those who are already skilled leaders. No matter what, like the whole catch up thing, you're always going to be playing catch up to somebody. And I think it comes down to, I guess, investing a lot of energy into a thought or into a word that gets people in trouble, that will make you in turn start having this negative self-talk, such as, we'll go with a word failure. So how I see failure, I don't see failure as the end of the road or anything. I just see failure as, okay, now I try something else. I fail again. Now I try something else. And I just keep going with it. So it doesn't necessarily stop me in any form or anything like that. Like I don't feel like I'm investing that much time in the term failure. Like I did something bad. Like I'm a bad person. I'm a failure, because that would be one of those things that you don't want to say to people like, oh yeah, I'm a failure. Even though probably their idea of failure, your idea of failure, probably two different things. So it comes back down to, I'm so far behind others. Same thing. A lot of times you're going to be behind a lot of other people's. And then if you are behind on other things, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I didn't learn that until, I don't know, 30 years of my life. Because through elementary, middle school, high school, even the start of college, I just went and asked questions because I don't want to seem like I'm stupid. But then the more and more that I thought about it, if it's something that I wanted to do, something that I wanted to be, such as I think at one point it was like web design and then like business. So, and social work, so psychology, things like that. So those are things that I really cared about. So I was going to ask those questions because I really needed to know the answer, um, in order to make me a better business person, a better web designer, better social work, whatever the case may be. Excuse me. So I'm always making mistakes and it's embarrassing. yes, that could be a little embarrassing. So this is a lot of the self-talk that we have, and it's easy to have it. Like I said earlier, it's more of a passive thing. It's not one of those things that you have to think about. You just kind of do, and you're gonna feel embarrassed if you're always making mistakes. But the more and more mistakes that you make, maybe the better and better. If it's a product or something that's going to um, make you into who you are. Um, and so a lot of times on how to avoid like a lot of these things, it all comes back down to try not to invest so much energy into a thought um, or into a word. So just a little thought. So Carlos might be out for I don't know a few times or however long. So the big thing, like I even have self talk. Like it was one of those things like should I keep doing this? Should I not do it? Um, and pretty much what it like came down to was I need to stop with that because like I enjoy doing this. I enjoy trying to give as much content, content as I can to people that will help them. And so if this is helping you, hope you hit the like and subscribe to see everything that we're going to be doing, whether it's me and Carlos, whether it's me and somebody else, whatever the case may be. Hope you like and subscribe. Um, but yeah, so there was like a lot of self talk that I was having within my own self because sometimes all you have is your thoughts in your head and that's it. And sometimes it's hard and it goes back to investing a lot of energy into a thought or into a word. So I guess invested a lot of energy into can I still do this? I can't do it because I'm going to be the only one. Am I going to be able to have a monologue that lasts 20, 30 minutes that's going to be engaging, whatever the case may be, which I'm hoping it is. And I'm hoping, like I said, that you guys get good content out of it. My big thing is I just love helping people and I'm going to continue to do this as long as I can and be consecutive with it at least once a week, maybe a little bit more, who knows? But it's how I'm avoiding it is finding the bigger purpose of this, which is building relationships and community. So, since those are my big two things, I feel like me doing this podcast, whether it's audio only or whether it's video, like on YouTube and stuff like that, that I am helping, that I am building relationships, that I am going to eventually build a community for everyone that's out there in order to get together and have like these discussions about, for the most part, anything that's appropriate that we have conversations about. So another one that it was talking about is trusting your growth and seeing the effects. I'm not improving fast enough. I'll never become a competent leader. Others are progressing much faster than me. I must be doing something wrong. So I have heard that one. Um, I do kind of see the whole thing of like, I'm not improving fast enough, but we don't know the circumstances of the other people. So, for instance, some might, like myself, like maybe I have a family, maybe have kids, and maybe the other person, they really don't have much going on except for a job. And I also have a job. So they might be able to put more time and effort than I can. So maybe that's why they're progressing a little bit faster in whatever area or whatever arena that they're trying to get into. Um, so a lot of this comes down to like changing the story. A big thing on how to avoid a lot of self-talk is gratitude. Being grateful for what you have, being grateful for what you have not lost. Um, and one of the big things, which is kind of morbid or whatever the case may be, um, of what Gary Vee thinks is he thinks when he wakes up, he's grateful for everything. If nobody in his family has died or anything like that, he's grateful. because family is really big for him. So a lot of times, like what all this other stuff that's going on, uh, where it's easy to have like this like negative self talk and stuff like that. It's not it's easier for me to say it, but there's a lot worse people off that's out there. And the reason why I feel like it's hard to see that is because it's out of sight, out of mind. And if you don't see it, it's almost like if I don't see it, then I don't believe it. The whole thing, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a noise? Well, who knows? Because they say that sound is perceived by the ear. And if there's no ears there, then it's not perceived. If it's not perceived, then it's not making a noise. I guess that was a little side note or something, but I just remember hearing that a long time ago. So my efforts aren't making a difference. I'll never achieve the level of lead by desire. So yes, so this could be another negative self talk, that you're not making a difference, that you're not doing this, not doing that. So example, this is something that's coming from personal experience. So I used to be a substance abuse counselor for the adolescents. So you can only imagine like a lot of kids, a lot of at-risk youth, for the most. Well, I feel like all kids are at-risk youth, but for the most part, it was always like I can talk to the kids until I was blue in the face. But for the most part, like if they're going to do whatever bad thing that they're going to do, they're going to do it no matter what. So one time I had a kid that came up to me and he was like, Winslow, he's like, I see what you're doing and it seems like it's good, but how do you continue to do it? Because it doesn't seem as anybody's like really listening and nobody really wants to stop. And I said, you're right. A lot of them don't probably want to stop. And I told him, unfortunately, what's going to happen is they're only going to stop when they need to stop, which is the unfortunate part, meaning like maybe a health concern or something like that. Maybe they get locked up, whatever the case may be. But my big thing was, yes, the majority of the stuff that I speak to you guys, um, all I'm doing is sowing a seed. So maybe not right now, I'm not making a difference, but eventually maybe there is going to be a difference. Um, and so I just try not to think too much, as in, if I speak education into the kids' lives, it's going to work or it's not going to work. I don't think in that aspect. I think that I'm just going to do what I feel is right. I'm just going to do what I feel is right. And all I'm doing is sowing seeds. So it's not about like, oh, I'm not going to be able to change kids' lives, because if I continue to think about that, going back to the investing into the negative aspect of it, I'm not going to think like that, because all that's going to continue to happen is negative self talk, and I'm going to talk myself probably out of like even caring about what I'm doing for the kids. And so then I have to write a new script in my head. All I'm doing is sowing this seed, and it is what it is. So one of the other things was leadership comes naturally. I'm just lucky. I don't really deserve the success I've achieved. I'm constantly worried about my leadership skills will deteriorate and I'll lose my abilities. So one of the things with that is that you can continue to educate yourself. That was one of the phases within last week's uh, second key blink idea. Um, Part of the fourth phase. One was about continuing your education, gaining the knowledge and everything. So, like, let's just say that I had an idea like, I'm just lucky. So, pretty much like happenstance, like, I don't really deserve the success I've achieved. There has to be something in there that made you be successful at whatever you're doing. So, if you don't see it in the sense of being a leadership at that time, what got you into um, that position? Because even if it was somebody gave you um, somebody gave you the opportunity to be a leader, but it was your friend or something like that. Well, how did you meet that friend? There's probably a way that you networked with them. Um, that's probably another thing in another episode that I'll do about like how I've been able to gain um, my networking circle, which is a pretty interesting thing. Um, but it's like if you're constantly worried that your leadership skills will deteriorate and you'll lose your abilities, something as simple as gaining more knowledge. Um, and so that's something that you can do with, with an example such as that. So another thing that talks about is I'm an imposter. People who eventually discover that I'm not capable as they think. The whole imposter syndrome. Um, I don't know. I'm like, I'm a nobody. Why is anybody listening to me? So a lot of times is if you are speaking your truth of whatever like personal development, spiritual development, if you are speaking your truth and if somebody listens to you, even if it's just that one person, first of all, um, you're still being a leader because you're leading a group of two, yourself and somebody else. Um, so the only thing that I feel like with the whole imposter syndrome, like um, that you don't know what you're doing because a lot of times you're comparing yourself to somebody else, which there's always going to be somebody better than you, and that's just something that you have to deal with. Um, but a lot of times it comes down to the person that's giving the content. So if you are somebody that loves what you're doing, and then there's somebody else that might know a little bit more, but maybe they're a little bit dull, maybe they're, I don't know, uh, not that fun to listen to, their voice is squeaky, whatever the case may be. People will gravitate towards you if you're genuine in what you do. If you have an inviting, well, one thing I've heard before is me and Carlos have inviting faces. I don't know what that means, but it sounded nice. So maybe you have an inviting face. Maybe how you explain something is more, you tell it in a better story or whatever the case may be. So, imposter syndrome, another thing, it all comes down to how and what type of energy you're investing into that thought. Um, and like I said, how I'm dealing with, so maybe it's not so much avoiding it, but it's how I deal with it. How you avoid it would be to stop thought when it comes into your mind, which a big thing would be like I've seen people like put rubber bands around their wrist, and if they have a negative self talk, they'll snap it. And I guess the idea is kind of to kick themselves the idea of the self talk. I know a couple of people that have done it. Seems every once in a while that it works. So maybe that's one thing on how you could try to avoid it. But the big thing would be to change the story of whatever story you're telling yourself, change the story into a positive spin on it. Kind of like how in my example is me being the individual that might be doing the podcast by himself for a little bit. But first of all, I'm okay with that because I know that there's an end goal in this whole thing, and it's to build relationships and to build community. And if I'm more focused on that, then all this other like negative self talk, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do it, imposter syndrome, like I'm just acting like I'm somebody that I'm not. But if I'm true to myself, if I'm genuine with what I am saying, then that's all I can do. Um, and so, like, yes, I will probably continue to have the negative self talk of talking myself into a rut and everything like that. But then every single time I do that, I just need to flip the script, change another, um, change that story, change the verse, and go on. Um, It's all about doing the process, and the next step in front of you is the most important step. So today, when I was told the news of what I was told, step that I needed to do was to do the next podcast. And that's what I am doing today. So I'm hoping that that will help you out a little bit of the whole negative self-talk thing, and maybe how to avoid it, how to keep going despite the negative self-talk. Yeah. And I'm hoping that you liked it, and love every single one of you. And I hope you got something out of this. And check us out like on Instagram, Facebook. For the most part, it's under at the Creative Whole. Or you could drop some comments and I will get to you as soon as I can. And yes. So thanks for listening to another episode of the Creative Whole podcast. And this is Winslow. And I'm hoping you guys enjoyed what I had to talk about today, which was negative self-talk and how to kind of avoid it. Until next week, I will see you next week. If there's anything that you want to talk about, drop a direct message, or they call them DMs, into Instagram, Facebook, tweet me at, I think it's Winslow Low, or maybe it's Creative Whole 23, I think. And yeah, we will hook up and we will talk. And I am here for you. And that is it. So peace out. Have a good one, everybody.